Hello students and welcome to week 6. We're going to call this Blended Learning 2 as we continue the consideration of using digital tools in our classrooms, blending an online digital experience with the analog face-to-face experience that most of us have had in a traditional public school setting. This week we have a collection of videos and some instruction, a couple of infographics as we dive into this idea of blended learning. First up is something for you to consider in your philosophy of education. Here we have a performance, the people versus the school system, putting the school system on trial for its failure to adapt, evolve, and make progress with what it is and how it functions in today's 21st century world. I think it truly does attach to our philosophy of education as we consider what is good teaching and learning, but also ultimately, what is the purpose of public school education? Why are we going to be teachers? Why do we force students to sit in our classrooms 8 hours a day? What is the purpose? And that's worth considering. And so you'll have that video first before we dive into a consideration of what specifically web tools can do. And if we think about it, web tools, these accessible resources, allow students to do a number of things. Firstly, they inform. These web tools like videos and blogs and audios and podcasts, these digital tools inform students. They communicate information to each other or to themselves. Web tools allow the students to manipulate simulations or websites. They can collect the data, which the next web tool, it says it can collect data into database and Google Forms, and it can manipulate that data and present infographics, which also doubles as inform. And web tools can help think through concept maps and Padlet and Prezi. And so think about that in your classroom. How can you utilize a web tool to inform, manipulate, collect, and think? Or, as we might say in the 21st century skills require that students communicate, collaborate, critically think, and create. How do your web tools in the classroom, how does your specific one that you're using for the tools project allow students to do the 4 C's? Is it more focused on informing? Is it more focused on manipulating, collecting, or helping students think so that they can reach those higher order thinking skills, which is the central premise? As we're evaluating these web tools for engagement, enhancement, and extension, we want to make sure we're also considering how each tool allows a student to go beyond the lower order thinking of remembering and understanding and applying. We want to drive higher order thinking in our classrooms. That's why we push to create at the very top of Bloom's taxonomy. And that's what we can use. We can use Bloom's taxonomy to engage ourselves in thinking about the use of digital tools. Now, for those of you that might be a little rusty on what Bloom's is, I've got a video and a quiz using Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle itself is a digital web tool that allows you to take just about any video you can find online, specifically in YouTube, and turn it into a quiz or a learning opportunity. I encourage you to take a look at it, but first click on that link and take that quiz. After you've taken that quiz, now we can continue to think about, well, here is Bloom's taxonomy laid out in these rows with iPad applications aligned with each one of those levels. And again, we want to move beyond these lower level thinking skills to these higher order thinking skills. We want students analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So you might think, what tools are you familiar with? And where do they fit on the taxonomy? Another look at the same concept. Here you go. Here's another collection of digital tools, not specifically iPad-based. Same question again. What digital tools are you familiar with? Where do they fit on the taxonomy? And I encourage you to think, what tools do you use that may not necessarily be education-based, but you could use in the classroom? And again, here's the pedagogy wheel, version 4.1. There's actually a new version, 5.1. And if you zoom in right here, use your camera, and you can snap a picture of this and visit the link that will pull up this infographic for you to look at in depth and much closer. Keep Bloom's in mind. It can help you think about technology integration, specifically as we try to drive our students to those higher order thinking skills. Use the verbiage of Bloom's. Allow yourself to kind of think, what is it that you're trying, what is it you want students to be able to explain? What do you want them to be able to interpret or express, or what's a skill you want them to do? Identify the verbs that are correct, and then begin to create those question stems using Bloom's taxonomic verbs. Now we have a message from the Tools CEO. Continuing our mini project this week, we dive, of course, into enhancement, and there's a video all about that. I asked you in that video to also address the ISTE standards in your Tools project. So here are 3 videos I'd like you to review and consider as they relate to your digital tool that you're evaluating. The first one's about voice, giving voice to students. The second one is about changing the story, both the story of school and the student story. And the final one is a blended example of what works in blending face-to-face and digital technology instruction. The first 2 are specific to ISTE. The third has representation of ISTE standards, but they're not explicit. And so you might try and look for where you're seeing the ISTE standards present in that final video. Here are the ISTE standards for you to look at again and consider how they relate to your digital tool that you're evaluating for the Tools project. You're going to want to add information about your digital tool and the ISTE standards to your EEE evaluation page. What that looks like is up to you. It might be a matrix, it might be a simple couple of paragraphs, it might be another video or an infographic. That's up to you. Use your creativity. Students, go to the rest of the learning module now and complete this week's work. If you have any questions, please email me and I will be in touch. Thank you so much.